Hello students, welcome to the first class of cell biology, and in this video we are going to talk about the cell theory. So in cell theory there are two words. First one is the cell and the another one is theory. Okay. Firstly I would like to discuss the word about something about the theory. Okay. So what is a theory? Theory means firstly, as per the scientific temperament, you firstly observe a certain phenomena to occur. Okay. So the first thing is the observation. Anything happening you observe. Okay. Observation. Okay. Then the second thing is the formation of hypothesis. When repeatedly anyone or any scientific community observe a certain phenomena, then they form certain hypothesis about it. Okay. So the second step is the formation of hypothesis. Fine. And when this hypothesis were discussed among the scientific community, scientific people, many scientists of different reasons. Okay. So they discussed the hypothesis, and from their observation they form a hypothesis, and after discussing this hypothesis they come to a conclusion and make a theory. Okay. So the third step is the formation of theory. Fine. And after that, when this theory is repeatedly scrutinized, repeatedly it has got changes in by inculcating new knowledge, new discoveries, then this theory will ultimately transform into principles. Fine. Principles. Fine. So the cell theory was given by Schleiden and Sichuan. It was they were the topmost scientists of botany and geology. Okay. So what happened? You have seen here, firstly they form the observation, then they form the hypothesis, and ultimately they reach to a theory. And nowadays we discuss about cell theory, or the modern version of the cell theory is known as cell principles. Fine. So where does the cell theory comes into existence? In earlier days, you can say about in 1600s, when there were no microscopes, no any other lenses were discovered, then there was nothing about science. How we can see the microscopic things if there were no lenses, no microscope. Okay. So there was a merchant called Antony von Leeuwenhoek. Okay. So he was a lens or glass maker or lens maker, and he was very curious about seeing the small microscopic things through his lenses. And in this curiosity he discovered he see many such important things like the sperm, protista, bacteria into his lenses. Fine. So he was not a scientist, but he was a merchant, and he makes lenses, and he done a pioneer work. Okay. So his name was this cell theory didn't complete without taking his name, because the instruments are very important in the discovery of microorganisms. Without these instruments, without these microscopes and advanced lenses, we cannot see the microorganism with the naked eyes. So the microscopes and these microscopic technologies play a very vital role in the discovery of these microorganisms, and the formation of cell theory is mostly dependent upon the discovery of these microscopes. Okay. Also, there was another scientist named Robert Hooke. Okay. He was a scientist. Okay. He was an experimental scientist, Robert Hooke. Okay. So what he saw under the microscopes, at that time microscopes were there. Okay. So what he saw under the microscope, cell-like compartments in the cork cell, in the dead bark of plant cell, he saw this kind of structure. Okay. These kind of structures. In the olden days, any compartment is known as a cell. You can see the prisoners are kept into cells. Okay. So he saw this compartment like structure in the cork cells. Fine. So he termed these compartments as cells. Fine. So it was Robert Hooke who firstly saw this cork cells and compartment like structures and named them as cell anything you visualize, you can name them as per your wish. Okay, so he firstly named them cells, and later on he published this observation in a famous book, that is Micrographia. Okay, Micrographia, and it was a very famous publication by Robert Hooke, and he acknowledges this discovery of cells into this publication, and it becomes very famous. Fine. Later on in 1800s, because at that time scientific discoveries were very slow. Okay, so scientific discoveries was very slow because of many communication difficulties, or there were very less instruments of scientific field. Okay, and they were not available to everyone. So there was another botanist in 1838, that is Slidell. Okay, he was a botanist and he discovered plant cells. Okay, so he saw plant cells into the microscope. Okay, and he told that these plants were also made up of cells. Okay, so he said that plants are made up of cells. Okay, plants are made up of cells. Fine. And in the same year, that is 1 year later, that is 1800, about 39, there was a zoologist. Okay, zoologist, and his name was Sachwan. Okay, Schawan, Sachwan. What he observed, that he saw animal cells in the microscopes. Okay, and he made a conclusion that animal cells were also made up of cells. He saw some animal tissues under microscope, and he has seen the similar pattern of cells in the animal cells also, and he made a hypothesis that the animal cells are also made up of cells. Okay, then finally, after discussion between this Slidell and Sachwan, they proposed a cell theory. Fine. And in the cell theory, they proposed that all the living cells are made up of cells. So in the first point of cell theory proposed by Slidell and Sachwan, they proposed that all the living organisms are made up of cells. Fine. Okay. And in the second point, they proposed that these cells are the basic structural unit of life. Okay, structural unit of life. Fine. So they propose these 2 points, that is all the living organisms are made up of cells, and these cells are the basic structural unit of life. Fine. And at that time in 1800, it was also not clear that people generally believed that the new life came from spontaneous generation. Spontaneous generation means the cells come out just out of mud or out of any dust particles or anything new. Life just came out. Okay, it was not clear that life came from the existing cells. So another scientist came into existence, that is Rudolf Virchow. So another scientist, that is Rudolf Virchow, in 1858 proposed that the cells don't come out of spontaneous generation. Okay, and they come from the pre-existing cells, and the spontaneous generation theory is wrong. Okay, so he proposed a very famous term, that is omnicellular e-cellular. Okay, he proposed these terms. Okay, yeah, it means life comes from the pre-existing cells. It was Rudolf Virchow who discarded the theory of spontaneous generation and proposed the term omnicellular e-cellular. It means the cells come from the pre-existing cells. Okay, so this point become the third point of the cell theory, and in modern times we have so many advanced instruments, microscopes, and so many facilities that we have discovered lot of many things from till that date, and we are here in 2021. Okay, and that time the science was very basic, and in today time the science is very advanced. So many things have been discovered, and so many things are going to be discovered in the future. So cell theory have been modified as per the discoveries till date. Okay, so the modern cell theory, that is we can say the cell principle, have a few points which I am going to discuss with you. Now let us discuss the points of cell theory one by one. The first point is the cell is the fundamental unit of structure and function in living things. So fundamental means the basic. Okay, without cell there will be no microorganism, organism or any life. Okay, so this is known as fundamental. So the term fundamental was used. Structure means the cell gives the structure or to any organism. Okay, the look we are having and the look the plants are having, it is all due to the structure of a single cell. Single cell structure determine the structure of the whole organism. Fine. And the third term is the function, means all the functions which are performed inside the cell leads to the function of an organism. Fine. So all these terms, that is the fundamental, structure and function, means the cell is the fundamental unit for the reproduction, for the heredity and all other aspects of a living organism. Cell will be the basic unit of life. Okay, then the second point is all organisms are made up of one or more cells. Fine. So there will be organisms which are having single cell, and there will be organisms which are having multicellular, but there should be at least one cell. Okay, without cell there will be no life. All life exists into the cell only. Okay, so that's why the second point was that all organisms are made up of one or more cells. Okay, so without cell there will be no organism. At least if a living thing is there, then it should have at least one cell. Fine. And the third point is that cells arise from other cells through cellular division. Fine. It means there is no such thing known as spontaneous generation or de novo generation. Fine. All the cells which we are seeing today are have arisen from the pre-existing cells, and there is no such thing called the de novo generation or de novo synthesis of a cell. Fine. So this point is very important, and this point was not there in the Schleiden and Schwann theory, and it was Rudolf Virchow in 1858 who proposed this theory by coining the term omnicellular cellular. It means the cells arise from the pre-existing cells and there is no de novo synthesis of a cell. Fine. And the fourth point is that cells carry genetic material passed to daughter cells during cellular division. Fine. Means कि all the commands, all the structural function which we are seeing in the cell is controlled by the DNA, and it is passed from one cell to another through through the genetic transfer. Fine. So the fifth point is that all cells essentially the same in chemical composition. Means कि whether it is a plant cell, whether it is an animal cell, whether it is a microorganism, their chemical composition are almost same. Fine. Means कि there would be a DNA, and there would be DNA in plant as well as animal, and the chemical composition of DNA of animals and plants would be the same. Chemically they are same, but functionally and structurally they may be different because of the different repeats of the DNA. But if we at the chemical level, if we see, they are chemically same in the composition. Fine. And the sixth point is that energy flow, that is metabolism and biochemistry, occurs within cells. Means a single cell cannot or you can say an organism cannot show a function which is absent in a cell. Means all the biochemistry, all the metabolism occurs at the cellular level and in the cell. So these are some of the important points of cell theory, and I hope you have understood the cell theory very much. And there are some exceptions also of the cell theory. Means there are some points that are not included in the cell theory, and the viruses are one of the categories of them, because viruses are neither living nor dead. We cannot categorize them into either living or the non-living. When they are present in a organism, they use the machinery of that organism and do the cell division, while when they are present anywhere else or outside the living organism, they are not able to do the cellular division. So the viruses are an exception of the cell theory. So I hope you have liked this video and understood the concept of cell theory, and if you have any doubts, then you can write in the comment section. I will surely reply. Thank you.